Good afternoon, students. Please excuse my voice today because I have a cough. Welcome to the contact sessions for July in preparation for the August examinations for 2017. My name is Generosa Simon, and I'm your tutor for learner support in natural science and health. So first of all, I would like to welcome you to this module. And I would like you to be hardworking, dedicated, self-driven students so that you can make it in this course. And again, so that whatever you learn from this course, which of course you will pass given the hard work that you are going to put in, you will also be able now to apply this content during your teaching and learning in the classroom. This presentation is going to cover the subject content in brief, but I'll also give just the general guideline for you to put in mind when you are preparing for this coming August exams. With the introduction, so we are going to look at the content in your study guide in order to help you when you are preparing for your exam. So, but then again, I'm sure that by now you have a good idea of the subject content because you went through when you were doing your assignment, and again, as you are now starting to study for the coming exam. But again, note that we cannot be able to cover the whole content, as it's a lot of content. So we are just going to look at some of the issues within the units. And then, shall you need assistance, I will leave you with my contact details, and then you can contact me, you can email me, then we can take it up. So we are just going to highlight a few aspects from the units. So, but again, it's not going to be, I'm not going to dwell on the examination scope. We are just going to look at some of the units we go through so that you have an idea when you are going to now go through the whole unit, the whole module yourself. So please make sure that you finish or you study the whole study guide in preparation for the examination, because what we are going to do is just some, but it's not an examination scope. The overview of our module, the learner support in natural science and health. We have 8 units. The first one, we are going to look at the aspect of learner support in terms of physical, cognitive, or what we call academic or emotional support that you need to give during your teaching and learning. We also look at the support in terms of human health and development. And then we are going to discuss learning support in scientific processes. And then in the issues about matter. And then we are going to also look at the issues on learning support in issues about water and soil. And also air and living organisms, issues about sunlight and forces, and magnetism and electricity. I'm sure that when I'm talking about this content, you are aware, because this is the content that you are supposed to be teaching in your natural science and health grade 6 and 7. The important notes for August examination. So we are going to have short questions. So short questions, usually you will encounter words like you are going to mention, you will be asked to define, you are going to be asked, for example, to name or to describe and compare. And then again, you are going to have a bit longer than that, what we call the essay type questions, where you will be now asked to explain, to discuss, to analyze. That's a type of an essay because it's in paragraphs. So, and then the total marks will be 100. So when you are going to now study for August, make sure that you can be able to answer the short questions. At the same time, you are also going to answer to meet the long questions. But they are all compulsory. You are not going to have any option of choosing. Again, now when at the beginning of your module, there is exit learning outcome, what you are supposed to know at the end of the whole course. So you make sure that you pay attention to that in preparation for your examination. And again, at each and every beginning of the unit, you are again going to have the learning outcome, what you should make sure you know about that unit. So you should also pay attention to that in preparation for your August examination. So the whole syllabus is going to be covered. So make sure that you finish your module. Let's start with the content. So for the first unit, how learning should be supported physically, cognitively, and emotionally in each classroom, we are going to look at the 3 aspects of learner support. I'm sure you are aware of them already because we have the physical aspect, we have the cognitive aspect that we sometimes call it the academic aspect, and then we have the emotional aspect. That those are the 3 learning support, 3 areas of learning support in natural science and health. So the physical aspect. So when you look at the physical aspect of your classroom, you need to look at what you have to put in mind that the environment that you create is the one that will influence learning in your classroom. For example, let's look at your teaching and learning approach in natural science. When you teach natural science, how are you going to use the approach, or which approach are you going to use to make sure that learning is taking place positively in your classroom, that you are preparing your learners for the future. So most of the time we talk about learner-centered approach. So this is the approach that most of the teachers need to use, because this is the approach that makes sure that learners are physically interacting with the objects. Learners are discussing. Learners are manipulating the apparatus. When they are doing the experiments, they are learning from each other. They use their hands in a way the learning that is taking place in the class is supported by the teaching materials that is being used, by the teaching methods that is being used. So in this way, when you have learners that are involved, when you have learners that feel ownership of the learning, they are learning through discovery, exploration, and observation, you will see that they will be more encouraged. They are likely to remember what they have learned, and they will always look forward to such a lesson. So we look at the architecture and the furniture in the classroom. How is your classroom arranged? Is it inviting? Is it encouraging for the learners to want to learn, to even want the lesson not to be finished? So you look at how you arrange your class. For example, if you arrange kids one here and the other one there, the tables are separated and they are far from each other. It's like you are saying you do your own thing separately. You are not supposed to look at the other person. So in a way, it's not encouraging enough. But when you arrange them in a group, maybe of 4 or 5, then it's like there is cooperative learning. They are learning from each other, they are discussing, and when they say an exercise, they show each other how it's done, and at the same time they are doing it, and you can see that learning is taking place. At the same time, they can reflect of what's happening when they were discussing, and at the same time, they are likely to even recall it in the exam. In fact, even when they go for other environments, they can be able to recall what they have learned in that specific lesson. So you have to look at the furniture. You have to make sure that for example, they are flexible so that learners are also free to discuss in groups and easy access and circulation in the classroom, which can encourage learning. Let's look at the second aspect, which is the cognitive or the academic aspect. This one we are looking at how information is being learned, processed, assimilated, and used by the learners during the learning experience. If learners receive enough support from the teacher and from the material that the teacher is using, they are likely to manipulate the information they learn, and they are also likely to learn from the environment, because everything is in support. So we have the six cognitive domains, which are the evaluation, the synthesis, the analysis, application, comprehension, and knowledge. So you should be able to assess your learners and evaluate them based on those six cognitive as a teacher. And again, you have to make sure that those cognitive domains are accompanied or are utilized with good teaching methods. So when you talk of the good teaching methods, you want to look at you want to look at the experiment, the explorations. You want to look at the role plays. You want to look at the interactive teaching methods that you can use within your class. And at the same time, the assessment and the evaluation that you use also should be suitable, that when you are going to evaluate them within those six domains, they grasp whatever you've taught them for the day. And the third aspect is the emotional aspect, or the emotional support. So when we talk of emotional support, something that comes in mind is emotional intelligence. So we want the learners to be able to develop emotional intelligence. We want them to be able to, for example, when you have an emotional intelligence, is you can be able to recognize your own emotions. You can be able to recognize the emotions of the others, and at the same time you can express yourself, and you will be able to deal with also frustrations that comes your way. So when you have the emotional support in the class and learners that feel safe in your class, then they are likely to develop the emotional intelligence, and also through the practical experience, because when they are in a group, when they interact with the others, they will learn from each other because they are different. And again, as a teacher, you have to know that learners come with issues at school, different issues. It might be that maybe that learner has death in the family, that learner was abused and all that. As a teacher, you have to create an environment where learners feel supported, and you should put in mind that when a child comes to school, they come from different environment and they have their different emotions. So you create a platform where you can support these learners, and you can be able to recognize, and these learners should also be able to come to you when they have this emotions, and they know that as a teacher you will support them in a way. Then you are also encouraging them to learn, because they know there is support that is needed whenever they need support. So there is, for example, now let's look at the key issues of emotional support, by referring to your passion for teaching as a teacher. So maybe a question can come in like, explain or discuss the key features of emotional support by the teachers, by referring to the passion of teaching. As a teacher, you should have a passion. You can't just teach because you have to finish the syllabus, but you have to have the best interest of the learner at heart. You have to know that sometimes as a teacher you are not aware, but you are transmitting through maybe body languages. You are transmitting certain messages to the learner, so without intending to do so. So you have to realize that whatever you are saying, be it words or non-verbal, it's reflecting on your learners, and then it will also now it will come up to how the learners will perceive you, how the learner will perceive your teaching, and how at the end of the day, how they are going to feel in terms of teaching and learning, how they are going to also get what you are giving them, how they are going to feel supported in your class so that they can be able to also learn. Because at times you find teachers that they come to class, but then I'm going to cover this and that's it. But you don't really consider the best interest of the learners. You don't really consider how am I going to design this in a way that whatever the teaching method that I'm going to use, it's going to have enough materials, preferably the physical materials that the learners need to touch with their own hands, the experiments that they need to also use their own hands so that they can remember. So, but then if you have passion for what you are doing, you will do it, and all the necessary support will also be there because you know exactly what you are doing, and you are doing it because it's your calling, kind of. So let's look at the first one. The first one was the key feature, and then the second one. For example, another key feature is the warmth, or show respect and acceptance for all. So we all know that the environment where learners feel accepted, where learners feel respected, they are likely to learn more. They are likely to pay attention. They are likely to positively learn, because that is usually the environment free of discrimination. You don't look at the gender, you don't look at the class, you don't look at the preferences, sexual preferences, or the language. You are just going to treat all of them with respect. You are going to accept all of them. There is no harassment, there is no discrimination. So the atmosphere is mutual, and acceptance and everybody is respected. So even the learners will be very happy, and they would want to participate in that lesson because they know that their teachers is on their side. And the last one that we are going to discuss, because now I'm going to end with the last one, but I know you can proceed with the rest of the key features. So it's listening without interruption. It's very important as a teacher that we learn how to listen to our learners. You actively listen, and then you understand the message. And again, you have to praise the learners. You give them the positive feedback. Either you are going to approve, or you are going to commend, and then for future improvement. So you have to set time aside, for example, to discuss personal experience in the class. You have to emphasize, even the learners themselves, when they know that their teachers listen to them and they learn, they also learn that active listening is very important. They will also start listening to each other actively. The learning support in human health and development. With this one, we are going to look at the learner-centered approach in the class. Most of the times, you have the map with the five main main benefits of the learner-centered, but at the same time, you also need to accompany it with a discussion of each. So you take time off, and then you go through, you look at the benefit of each, and then you need to know and understand, because this is very important. Learner-centered is very important because this is where you get learner develop their inquiry thinking. This is when you get, they develop because they interact, they develop because they can be able to recall what they have learned. When they all learn, each of them go, and then they start telling each other, this one is right, yes, this one we can improve here, and then they can learn and they can recall this information. And again, in this process, the teacher will just be like a facilitator. You are not going to now be the one giving all the information, because learners are in charge of their own learning. So they are active, they are not passive. they are not, they usually refer to as empty vessels. They are not empty vessels in this process. They are active, they are in charge of their own learning, they are keen to learn, and they will learn collaboratively, learning from each other, and then at the same time, also they will develop their understanding, the competencies. So they will understand. They will even develop the ability to do things because they are in charge. They are doing the things themselves, not the teachers just writing. And then when they finish writing, the learners are supposed to memorize. Here they are learning. They are in charge of their own learning. They are discussing with the others, and then they can be able to remember all these informations. And most of the time now, when you have these groups, you give them a task. They go to their local environment. They get the materials, they learn from the local materials that they understand. So learning is supported, and if they support each other, then the whole environment is positive. So therefore the learning will also be positive. So the learning support in scientific processes. So we all know what are the basic scientific processes. You have them in your textbooks, but then the issue is how are you going to add the aspect of support. So when you talk about observation, of course, you cannot just go in the class and say, no, this is what observation is. It's about the sense of sight, touching, hearing, and smelling. So you have to come up, for example, with an experiment. So the material, the teaching method that you will employ to teach, for example, observation, it has to be something visual, something exploratory, something that is interactive, hands-on, so that learners feel supported, so that they can remember these things. Even in the class, they can remember what they did with their own hands, and then they can be able to recall in the exam or wherever they are in the future, because they are not just learning to pass exam, we are preparing them for the future also. So you do the same with the rest of the scientific processes. But most of the time you just have to come up with, you design an experiment, they go through all the steps as they do that experiment, and then at the end of the day they will learn from that. Then the helpful feedback. Features of helpful feedback to the learner. When you give a feedback to the learner, for example, what is the best way to give it in a way that the learner can remember, or the learner can take it in a positive way? For example, when you use the learner's name, the learner will feel valued. You see? The learner will feel valued. The learner will feel you praised, that they would want to also now, they would not take it as negative anymore, even if it's something that was not right. And then you look at, for example, when indicate if facts are complete, you make sure that because you are not just teaching them for that time, you are teaching them for the future. So you correct them in the way that facts are complete. And then you praise them for the good work, and then you do not be judgmental. But mind you, when you are going to be asked a question, for example, they are not going to ask you to list. Maybe they will ask you to list, but maybe they are also not going to ask you to list. You might need to now explain some of those, if not all. The learner support in issues about matter. Let's look at the classroom assessment under this unit. We have different types of assessment. You can assess your learners through summative. This is where you assess them at the end of the experience, or you use formative, or you use diagnostic. But the most important thing is that if you need to continuously assess your learners so that you can keep improving them where they need to be improved. On learning support in issues about air and living organism. With this unit, we are going to look at the importance of waiting time after you pose a question to stimulate learners' thinking and learners' participation in the class. Learners should be encouraged to ask questions. But again, also as a teacher, you also need to now use those, when you ask your questions, when you want your learners to answer, to think and answer, you cannot just ask what is. You have to ask, for example, with your own word, how do you understand this? So that you can also stimulate their thinking, so that you can also, like, learner can think and they can develop their thinking skills. But then at the same time, they should also know that they also need to learn how to ask questions. They also need to ask questions. But as a teacher, we need to ask questions that will learner need to apply their mind on. Learner support in issues about air and living organisms. Let's look. Nowadays, we talk about field trips. Maybe you want to take the learners for the field trip, just to expose them and to give them a different experience from the class. And let's say maybe you didn't manage to go. So how are you going to make it up? How are you going to make up for that field trip that you did not go with this technology that we have nowadays? So you look at the internet. So if you wanted to take them to Etosha, maybe to see the animals, you look at the internet, you come up with, you look at the animals. If there is a project, you give them a project, they use the internet, you show them how they can go about it, and then apart from the textbook they have in the class, and then they can also use the media, and they can, with the illustrations of plants and animals, and then they can also use the computer. So you teach them now how to research for those informations, and then if they need, they can be able to do it on their own. Learner support in issues about magnetism and electricity. The question is, why do we need to plan our lesson in advance? So we are going to talk about the importance of planning for your lesson in advance within this unit. When you are prepared, when you come to class prepared, you will also provide a meaningful engagement for your learners. Because you are prepared, you have the material that you come with. This is what I'm going to do today. This is the material I'm going to use. This is also an opportunity for the learners to interact with the material that you brought. But again, your learner will also now, your learner will also have, like, it comes also with respect from your learners, because they everything is logical, and the lesson is prepared, and so you also have an opportunity to look at what was weak at the previous lesson and how are you going to now improve it in your new lesson. And in conclusion, during examination, make sure that you read the instruction carefully. You pay attention to the keywords. Look at the keywords in your module. Familiarize yourself. What does it mean when they ask me to discuss? Read the question carefully and look at the possible marks, so that you know that if it's 5 marks, this is how much I need to give the answer. If it's 30 marks, this is how much I need to answer. And then do not leave the question blank. Make sure that you answer all the questions. Try by all means to answer all the questions. So then you just make sure you write neat, so that I can be able to see.